I want to prepare a little bit of a guide for you for the kinds of things you could expect to see on the Organic 1 final. So in question 1 you're going to see 10 reaction type questions. The first 3 of those questions will be reactions similar to what you saw in test 2 in question 6. These kinds of questions where you needed to figure out what the product of these kinds of reactions was, whether it was going to be substitution elimination or a combination of substitution and elimination. For these particular questions you will get the same table as you received with the test 2, and let's see if I can find that. There we go, this particular table right here. These are examples of those kinds of questions. You can find them starting on page 12 of your blue book, and I would recommend studying and practicing those. I think those would be a good way to work on those. Going back to the sample test final, the first 3 are going to be from test 2, question 6. The other 7 are going to be reactions you would have seen on test 3 or 4 in question 1, and I would recommend going over all question 1s from all the old tests 3 and 4, and I think there's a very good chance you'll find most if not all of those reactions in those old tests 3 and 4. The reactions won't be exactly the same. I mean, the reagents would be fairly similar, I imagine. Any reaction we studied in Organic 1 is fair game for question 1, but I think if you follow my advice you'll go a very long way to seeing and practicing pretty much all of the possible problems that you would see for question 1 of the final. I'm talking about the other 7 questions aside from the first 3, which were from test 2. The other 7 will be from test 3 and 4, question 1s. Question 2 is a synthesis problem, and it will be possible to complete this synthesis problem based on the reactions that you've done here in question 1. Question 3 will be similar to question 2 of test 3, and that's this kind of problem here where you're given an ether and you do an ether cleavage reaction and you end up with all of these products, and it's your job to figure out the mechanism of how to get all these different products. If you remember, the first 4 were from the cleavage, and these 3 here are from elimination processes that are going on as well. So I would go back and look at all the test 3 question 2s that I could definitely look at and make sure you can do all those. If you can do all of those, then you'll be able to do this one here. Question 4 on the final will be a roadmap problem, and I would say that if you go back and you look at all the roadmaps from all the test 3s and 4s of all the old tests, I think that would be a great way to study for this particular roadmap. I imagine that you'll see most of those reactions will be present here as well, or at least you'll be able to. If you do all of those roadmaps, then you will have seen examples of pretty much all of those on other roadmaps as well. But that would be the best way to study for that one. Question 5 will be similar to question 6 from test 4. It's an infrared spectroscopy problem where you're given a molecular formula and an infrared spectrum, and you're expected to draw structures that obey both the infrared spectrum and the molecular formula. So you expect something similar on the final as well. There will also be an NMR type question, a proton NMR, where you're given a molecular formula and a proton NMR spectrum, and you are expected to draw the structure of the compound that fits the molecular formula and the proton NMR spectrum, and to assign that compound as well with A's, B's and C's and assign the peaks. There will also be a question that is a combined infrared spectroscopy proton NMR question, where you're given a molecular formula, infrared spectrum and a proton NMR, and you're expected to find the compound that fits all of those spectra and the molecular formula, as well as assigning the peaks in both the infrared and the proton NMR. Alright, so in summary, 3 questions that are similar to test 2, question 6, that are related to these kinds of substitution elimination problems. You can expect the other 7 to be similar to reactions you would have seen in old tests 3 and 4's question 1s. There will be a synthesis problem based on question 1. Question 3 is based on question 2 of test 3. Question 4, best way to study for that is to go back and look at all the roadmaps from test 3s and 4s that you can find and study those. You've got the infrared spectrum molecular formula question, proton NMR molecular formula question, and combined spectroscopy question involving proton NMR, IR, and the molecular formula.